This video is brought to you by Squarespace. When it comes to websites, online stores, etc., there's no place to build a beautiful online presence like Squarespace. There's no cherry on top of a bad movie quite like a dance party ending. Like when you're finally about to finish a bad movie and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel and then they hit you with a dance number right as the credits roll. But I think in some very specific cases, these scenes can be earned and actually end up feeling like a really sweet ending to the film. Because let's think about dancing. It's a form of freedom, to use your body to communicate a new beginning, a victory, and for that to come at the end of a film will most of the time mean our characters are free and happy. But how do you earn that, and what films do this best? Let's specify some things first. I think the kinds of films that most of the time get away with this are live action. The first and most recent example that comes to mind is Another Round, a film where the most iconic scene from it is probably the dance scene. And that scene just works. It gives me goosebumps every single time to see him finally come out of his shell and be fun and free and blah. There's also Tropic Thunder, where the dance is just another added level of absurdity to go along with the film. It's a ridiculously over-the-top movie that is making fun of Hollywood movies, so it's only right that it ends in one of Hollywood's most irritable tropes, and then comes out being one of the better examples of that trope. So you see, live action, because of its target audience, will most of the time find a way to make a dance scene work. Animation, on the other hand, oh god. The dance party ending, the official term for this, first got really popular when Shrek dropped. I will acknowledge an earlier version happened in Toy Story 2 when the penguin did his own version of You've Got a Friend in Me, and all the other toys sat around and watched, but that feels different. That feels like a group of friends listening to their friend perform a classic, not exactly a party, you know? Now this is a party. Now don't worry, I'm not about to say anything negative about this movie, and I'm especially not going to say anything negative about the dance party. Shrek's final dance party is one of the greatest and most uplifting moments a person can experience in film. How can you watch this and not smile? It is impossible. And even though this scene might be considered annoying to a lot of people, and even though this scene is what kicked off this terrible trend, I think it really works on its own. The whole film is taking fairy tale tropes and messing with them, so to end this story with an over-the-top celebratory dance scene just feels right with the overall tone. Not to mention the song itself, arguably one of the most important aspects of the dance party ending. This movie chooses a Smash Mouth cover of Now I'm a Believer by the Monkees. Once again, a sillier, more modern interpretation of an older classic, which is what this movie is. And yeah, the song is super big and rock bandy. You actually see the characters playing instruments. The lyrics about falling in love, then I saw her face, they match what is actually happening in the story. This is a wedding celebration. Everything about it makes sense. Because Shrek right off the bat pitches itself as being an extremely self-aware and laid-back movie. It has tons of heart, don't get me wrong, it's such a touching story, but for this to end on a sincere, quote-unquote traditional off into the sunset moment, it just wouldn't make sense. The songs themselves are a huge way of getting away with this trope. So many of these animated dance party endings rely on the poppiest pop song you've ever heard in your entire life, a pop song that feels like it exists in a completely separate universe from the one the film takes place in. And my little theory is that most of the time they stick a catchy pop song at the end just so families could A, leave the theater in some sort of good mood, like a sparkly way of sticking the landing to your film just so it feels like, hey, that wasn't a total waste of time, and B, so that some part of the film stays in your head after you've left, especially when it's an original song that happens to be catchy, because then you're like, hey, I like the Trolls, maybe I'll even listen to that Trolls song from the Trolls movie and go home and wear my Trolls shirt. I don't know. It's like that Josie and the Pussycats thing, but the ironic thing about that is that I listen to the Josie and the Pussycats soundtrack on literally a daily basis, so I'm no better. If you pick an older song that was put in the film just because it sounded like a really sweet ending to the story, you're more likely to get away with that scene. It feels a hell of a lot more genuine. A good example of this could be Fantastic Mr. Fox, which uses Let Her Dance by the Bobby Fuller 4. The 60s rock sound of it matches the rest of the film's soundtrack, and it actually feels like the kind of song Mr. Fox would listen to. And you know what? It's just cute. A bunch of animals in a supermarket dancing, zooming out to the credits in typical Wes Anderson form. It just works. Another example is Robots. This may be the first time I talk about this movie on this channel unironically, but hey, they got a decent dance scene. They famously choose Get Up Off of That Thing by James Brown, which is kicked off by the joke, it's a fusion of jazz and funk, junk. Which, come on, that's pretty good. And I don't know, it kind of works. Probably because Get Up Off of That Thing is just a really simple and funny song. You can't cringe watching a bunch of CG animated robots dance to Get Up Off of That Thing. It's just a good time. But using an older song isn't always your ticket to greatness here. I think one of my least favorite examples of this trope is in Despicable Me. both the first and the sequel. They use You Should Be Dancing by the Bee Gees and YMCA by Village People, and maybe it's because at this point the dance party ending has been so overused that there's not even a point, but it feels like they're not even trying here. It doesn't feel like any thought went into choosing these songs. They're like the first result when you think of classic dance songs. It's not like either has anything to do with the plot. Neither film needed these scenes. Both had an ending that could have cut to the credits and been done with, but they just had to squeeze in these two little tiny dance scenes that add nothing at all. Even Zootopia, which I know this might get me in some dicey territory, but that final Shakira concert is just without a doubt the worst part about the movie. And maybe it's the animation, because throwing the Shrek characters in that setting, having them all do these different dances, and to all miraculously be this excited about these two falling in love, all of that somehow worked really well. But throwing all the Zootopia characters into this arena just feels corny and artificial, which it is, and I know it pleases families to watch their favorite characters dance to a catchy tune. There's nothing wrong with that, but it feels separate from the film itself. You're limiting their realistic elements to these lifeless, half-dancey movements that feel awkward and uncomfortable. That's why I don't have as much of an issue when they do the thing where the characters dance in front of a black background during the credits, because somehow it feels more logical to watch a singular character in the middle of the credits dance. The only exception to this being the Nut Job, where they have Psy dance to Gangnam Style. Now that's just plain inexcusable. In Despicable Me, there's not even that many lyrics to the song, and they aren't even dancing in any interesting way. We're just watching a really boring dance party. And it comes off boring because it wasn't supposed to happen. We're watching a scene that wasn't pivotal to the movie, that didn't make sense to the movie. It's like watching a musical where the song isn't originally written for the material. It doesn't have anything to do with the story. The characters aren't even singing. Most of them aren't even dancing. The role these dance scenes have in their movies is simply to make the audience feel something the movie itself couldn't give them, but that a universally adored hit song could, like the YMCA. And when you take that into consideration, the simple trick to earning the dance party ending is to just respect the audience. Shrek, Fantastic Mr. Fox, Megamind, and even Robots earned it. Those are funny movies that treat themselves as well as the audience member with a certain level of respect by knowing that a dance sequence is a silly way to wrap up a silly movie, not some sort of final punch to the heart that's really gonna steer a mediocre ship around. Because at the end of the day, I really don't take issue with cheesy dance numbers, even in animated films. I take issue with a choice being turned into an expectation, and it being an expectation that nobody was asking for. And I think that's it. Thanks for watching. Go watch Shrek and form your own opinion. And before you head out, I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now, Squarespace, if you didn't already know, is a place where you can go online to build your brand, whether that be an online store, a blog, a portfolio, you name it. They have professional portfolio designs where you can create galleries for your work, as well as password protected pages for clients. Me? I love their video blog feature, which allows me to share some of my favorite videos as well as any other work I have going on in a way that looks really nice. And they have a built-in mobile web designer, which will make it so that any website you make automatically looks great on any mobile device while matching your style in the process. The best part about it all is that if you go to squarespace.com/Karsten, you can get 10% off of your first purchase. So thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Thanks for watching this video. Have a good night. Okay, bye.